Hey, this is Sabrina Monarch of Monarch Astrology and Magic of the Spheres podcast. There's honestly so much to tell you about this current transit of Venus-Saturn conjunct in Pisces. Let me show you the chart for a moment. This is when it will be exact, January 19th in Eastern European time, probably January 18th in the States. It's going to be in 16 degrees of Pisces. And this has been building. We've been in this mood, this energy, both of Venus in Pisces time and also Venus approaching Saturn time. And I have been floored. I've been blown away by this transit. Venus in Pisces is a really special time. And even though it's approaching Saturn, and so that brings up things around the obstacle or the barriers, it just so happened that my pursuit of education about the erotic, which is, ongoing, but where it's been at during this transit, I happen to be learning so much about the eroticism of the obstacle, which fit perfectly with this transit. And has been just so internally like miraculous and exciting to be with that I'm really excited to translate it to something more universal and shared so I can share it with you. So if you're new here, please subscribe to my channel. At any rate, leave a comment, let me know what resonated with you, or just say hello. These things are very supportive to the growth of the channel. And of course, like this video. So I'm just going to freestyle a bit here about Venus in Pisces and Saturn in Pisces and putting them together. I think as an overview, just to give you a sense of where we're going to go, I'm really exploring the redemptive, healing, magical, kind of evolutionary angle of this current transit. I think despite some of the difficulties or challenges with this transit, which I'll name, it is a very beautiful opportunity for heart healing and like leveling up in our devotion to what we really value the most. And I'm very excited. Just having experienced this transit on my end, I'm very excited to talk to you about it. So, first, I want to talk to you about Venus in Pisces. This is the exaltation of Venus. In other words, it's like Venus at her vacation home. So, Venus is classically at home in the signs of Taurus and Libra. So, you have like the physical, sensual, like five senses, very body oriented Taurus Venus placement. And then you also have the intellectual, musical, scent, perfume, things traveling in the air, beautiful words, beautiful music, beautiful smells, relational skill sets of Venus and Libra. And when Venus gets into Pisces, it is a very profound, but very oceanic transit because we have Venus, goddess of love, entering a sign that has to do with the everything, the oneness, spirituality, the return to source, the pursuit, the finding of, the connecting to God and spirit in this life. And so Venus becomes flooded with eroticism, with turn on, with oceanic sensations, with grief and praise, with a sense of the vastness of the cosmos, with a sense of the transpersonal dimension of love. And in a totally biased way, as someone who has Venus in Pisces, it is a profoundly receptive and delightful and like vast placement. But there are a lot of psychological difficulties and pitfalls along the way of this particular type of love nature. And so even just as a transit, Venus in Pisces will bring up things for healing, right? Like it will bring up opportunities for forgiveness. And before forgiveness, there has been some kind of insult, there has been a grievance, there has been disconnection. And this can be, forgiveness of other people, particularly of life, of God, and also parts of ourselves, because we do a lot, and I mean a lot, of self-rejection. This is the nature of the shadow, right? Any part of you that wasn't sufficiently mirrored early in life, or didn't get your needs met, didn't, was a threat to your belonging in family and in society, goes into the shadow. And this can also just be the feelings that you don't want to feel, right? Like if you've ever had an experience of having a feeling, but then having a bad feeling about the feeling that you're having, and then shoving the whole experience somewhere in the shadow. And that preserves something. It has a protective function in the moment, but over time and in general, it disconnects us from aspects of ourselves. And so we're carrying around that sense of separation that informs, these experiences that we have, this longing, what sparks us, what anyway, like basically reintegrating rejected parts of ourselves can be a version of Venus and Pisces forgiveness. And when that forgiveness occurs, it's like this deep forgiveness sets in of like, oh, there was never anything wrong with me. Like, of course I had those feelings, or of course I acted out in that way. And there's like a flooding of life force, of faith, of openness, of eroticism, of ability to play, of ability to be spontaneous, like things come online. And you can imagine that like peak experiences in love, or like the kind of like Disney gloss side of Venus and Pisces, that there's a massive story arc that goes along with having these types of feelings. And so I want to talk about, in light of that, the Venus-Saturn in Pisces is really interesting because this is bringing in a whole conversation, a whole healing conversation, a whole integrative, connected conversation with the obstacle, with the barrier, with the thing that has blocked us from union with ourselves, with life, with others, wherever it is that we struggle. That's something that I think is incredibly profound about this transit. So, circumstantially, in a mundane way, the Venus-Saturn conjunction can have something around blocks to connection, like, not being able to make the plan or schedule changes, or more dramatically, like the unavailable other, they can't cross the bridge, and the connection is there, but they're too triggered, or they don't want to face the connection, and it's like this tragic, like it can't happen kind of thing, or it's that thing within ourselves, or it's just bad timing, or things seeming to not work out, and having to deal with the frustration, or like the obstacle to what we want to unfold. So that's one of the Venus-Saturn things. Another part of it is actually like the possibility of a deeper kind of mastery, a deeper kind of excellence, a deeper framework or understanding of something that allows us to advance to a next level of the game of the heart or of love. So I was thinking about Venus-Saturn as like, how are we relating to things that are difficult for us to hold? So a few notes on this. Now I'm going to return to my notes here. So one thing that might be happening is that perhaps we are revisiting or opening up previously repressed feelings that we can now hold. And theoretically, we can now hold these things because we are wiser. We've had new experiences. We've learned new frameworks. Something has clicked, and we can open up past material that used to be off limits because it was too much. So if at some point in the past, something about our heart, our sex, our erotic nature, these kind of Venusian things specifically, was too much for us in any way, right? Our longing, our desire, some truth of our erotic nature, some sensations. If this was too sensational, or we judged it, or we had shame around it, it's possible that we shut it down And then now, as like a healing redemptive experience, it might be coming back up. It does not have to be acted on necessarily for healing or integration to occur. For example, um, there's so many threads here, but one is that you might have been attracted to someone and then like you can't be attracted to them for some reason, right? Maybe it didn't work out. Maybe they rejected you. Maybe the relationship is taboo or unconventional in some way. Um, maybe you have your own shame. Whatever the thing is, it's like not just shutting down the attraction or like the acting out on the attraction, but just shutting down all the feelings with it. And then feeling disconnected from this part of ourselves. If these things re-arise after we previously shut them down, it might be tender or put us in touch with something deep or meaningful within ourselves as we explore that current of energy, not necessarily acting on the particular impulse or fantasy, but even just accepting that we feel that way or we're revisiting the sensation in a different way. And so, yeah, it's interesting. I finished watching Maestro in Blue on Netflix, and it was like rapidly accelerating my Greek vocabulary, which was super cool. But two of the main love plots in the story are like forbidden love. It's an age difference love, which is very Venus-Saturn between like a 19-year-old girl and this like 40-something-year-old who's also like her teacher. And then there's like a gay couple and it's inside of like traditional Greek culture and like there's problems from the world around them making it difficult for them to express that love that they have and that they feel and that they can't control. And so both, much of the drama of Maestro in Blue, this show, I don't know if it's available in America, by the way, but the drama of this show was like about navigating um, these these love interests that are like socially taboo in that context, um, in that cultural context, and how that creates this really big transformation because either you have to shut those feelings down and like go on and be normal and have a normal life and be someone you're not, or you have a change of how you organize your life, your sense of, morality or what's allowed versus what's taboo, and becoming the person who can hold the inner authority of I'm going to love who I'm going to love. I'm going to have the kind of life that I want to have. And there's so many different situations, so many different particulars that there's no blanket answer of like, just do what your heart wants, just go for it, because that might not be true in certain situations. But I think it's the question of even just being able to hold the gravity of like, I feel this way. And I'm going to forgive myself that I still have feelings for someone, even though our relationship didn't work out and we're going through a painful breakup. I don't have to kill the part of me that still loves them, or I can remember what I liked about this person after, going through a breakup and I had to make myself allergic to everything about them. I had to block them. I had to erase them. I had to pretend they didn't exist and just to open back up to this well of like, I loved them so deep. I'll always love them and I can never change that. Right. So just this kind of coming back into sensation, coming back into acceptance, having a vessel, a body, a consciousness that can newly hold material that we had to shut down in the past because it was just too much for us. And so likewise, it is possible that the barrier is happening now, right? Like there can be with Saturn either like a victory of a long, arduous journey where we've gone through these struggles and now we're triumphing because we figured out the game and we got better at it and we excelled and we're getting, we're climbing. Or you might be actually in the problem, as in Maybe the barrier of the moment is feeling flooded, Pisces, with something that doesn't feel safe to hold or to contain. I can't entertain my feelings for someone because it will bring up old grief. Or I can't entertain how turned on I am because then my sex is turned on and that means something in particular for me and I have to act on it in a certain way. And like I have these patterns about my sexuality. So I don't even want to turn on the faucet, the floodgate, and like let that out. Um, Maybe it's that um, never mind. I don't have other examples written down here, but it's basically that sense of like I'm being flooded with something and my structure, Saturn, cannot hold this. It's actually maybe ego annihilating in some way or requiring some kind of rebuild. These issues don't need to be forced, but it does point to like a deeper self-holding, a deeper safety, a deeper conceptual holding that's needed. And I don't think this is just about, um, like getting what we want or having what we want. I think it's about becoming a person who can hold it, right? Like having a, a nervous system or a consciousness that can integrate the material. And so this can happen. This is very Pisces actually too, because one of the one of the gifts and problems with Pisces is fantasy. Fantasy is I think at this point, like I would say neutral, like it can be such a life-giving force. It can be so powerful. It can be such a world-building skill. And it can also be a form of escapism or addiction. And so maybe there's a confrontation for someone internally of like, I fantasize about having a particular kind of life, but if I actually met those circumstances or the road to that kind of life, I would shut down in the face of it. I'm more comfortable with the fantasy than I am with approaching the reality of it. So we have to be honest with ourselves about that kind of thing. Um, but this, if that is coming up now as a barrier of like, what is this thing in between me and what I really desire? Um, and it can be like both maybe there's some obstacle to maybe remove, but maybe there's also a foundation that needs to be built. Um, an example that I can think of is like there's some people, some communities where touch is really common, where people are sharing like sensual, loving touch, non-sexual touch, and it's just like the way that friends are connecting with each other. And so there's more of an abundance. There's a foundation set up where um, a romantic encounter or a sexual encounter isn't holding the entire pressure of their entire intimacy and physical touch needs being met. And so there might be an ability to be in the romantic intrigue or in the attraction field of a new possible connection and not have all of this material of like scarcity and desperation or something like that come up because there's already a sense of being, fed and nourished in this way versus someone who's feeling more starved of the need for like loving touch and only can find it through sex. It pressurizes the sexual encounter in a different way because there's not that same foundation. So using that metaphor for whatever the thing is, sometimes like a good foundation, Saturn will make space to really open into something. Another good example is peak experience. Um, because one thing that can scare people about peak experience is that, well, then they have to go back to normal life, right? So it's like if there's something that's very drudgery about normal life and you don't feel free to change it, but you can go have these peak experiences out there, and there's this division between like peak pleasure and enjoyment and magic and what actually is. it makes it harder to open up to peak experience because it becomes more of an escapist route, or it brings up a lot of grief or something like that, as opposed to the kind of the steady foundation building of what can make your actual everyday life hold more peak experience, more pleasure, so that it's not so scary to open up to it. Um, again, too, like if you have a life where it's really common for you to explore your feelings and talk about things, or um, you have safe connections to talk, then your inner material doesn't get so pressurized. If there's no foundation for it, it's more pressurized, etc. Again, think about this metaphor in whatever way. But possibly during this time with Venus Saturn, we're experiencing the benefits, we're reaping the rewards of previous investments in structures and frameworks that have supported our emotional life, sensuality, and sexuality, or we're experiencing current barriers, or wake up calls that we need, that we have a problem that we're trying to figure out, or that we need some kind of supportive structure or container. It might not so obviously look like that, but something that I feel is relevant with Saturn is that, like, whenever anyone is having like a problem or an issue, it might feel like a very unique problem, like a unique affliction. But if you zoom way out, if you look at it from an expert's lens, like a Saturn, like the person who's studied that phenomenon for years and has a skill set to help people with it, it's increasingly not personal. It's increasingly normal. We just don't always have that expert level framework to deal with what we're dealing with. And so either we ally with someone who does and we exchange in that way, or we're personally called to the pursuit of mastery, expertise around a certain topic. And so this could be coming up also with Venus Saturn of like, what do you feel so much like love and care for? Like, what are you devoted to understanding at a deeper, higher level? Like, that might be a path. Or you might be in a position of like, I'm so confused, like I need some level of direction, container support, etc. Or maybe a mix of both in different areas of life. Um, so on this note, though, of like the barrier and like how we deal with oceanic feelings and the repression of oceanic feelings, as in Saturn and Pisces, one manifestation of that, and how we're relating Venus Saturn to that at this time. Um, I wanted to share like something that I've been thinking about recently. Um, one of the mysteries of my life. Um, when I was younger, I felt really concerned and disturbed that people were together who like weren't really in love or had settled into a kind of monotony or mundaneness. That really terrified me. I wanted something different. And I think that when I expressed this kind of, at a teenage age also, this like anxiety about the future, or just like what's going on with society, like what is this? My own kind of curiosity about sexuality, I encountered a lot of adults who I don't know if they really believed this or they were just trying to tone down my teenage hormonal whatever. But it was like the messaging of like sex isn't important. Like it's not the most important thing. And when you get older, you'll understand that there's other things that matter. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, what the actual fuck are people talking about? Like, obviously, this is something that's really important. The culture is obsessed with it in some way. It's a huge internal sensational experience. And you're telling me that one day it just won't matter? I don't know if I want to see that future. Like, I want something else. And I think that my own like Venus Saturn reflections with that at the moment have shifted into maybe a young part of me was looking for erotic excellence just out in the world to exist, like for the culture to be erotically aware and concerned and caring. Um, and there was like a projection of that internal authority of something that matters to me. Like, why can't the world have it? Like, what's wrong with the world? What the fuck is going on? Um, and that these days, I'm actually really investing. I've been studying for myself embodiment and starting with like sexual energetic practices, tantric practices, different kinds of somatic healing, trauma healing, all of this coming a little bit later too, since like 2016. And more and more recently, it's become something that I've felt like, oh, it's time for me to like really study this at a level of a practitioner, not just a student. This is something I want to share with people. And I think it's a really big deal. I've been in containers where I'm guided into a deeper relationship with my body. And that is an immense thing to hold as a practitioner or as a teacher to guide people into their somatic experience. It's something that I recognized that I wanted and needed additional training for. So I'm going for it. And I'm having an amazing experience full of breakthroughs along this path already. Um, but I think it's just really, when I look back and I'm thinking about it, it's like this issue, this question has been concerning me for a very long time. And I haven't arrived yet at a place of like, oh, it's all resolved. Um, it just drove me into more of a Saturnian, like I want to understand this at the deepest, vastest level possible in this life. And I'm willing to show up for it. And I really care about this. Um, and so what disturbed me when I was younger and what I was afraid of happening in myself was like, what if I experience this magic, this Pisces peak experience? And then the narrative is like, well, that was fun, but now you have to go back to normal life. Or like, that was just a passionate, encounter, but now you have to, have a boring, monotonous life. And that just never sat okay with me. And so I think there is something with Venus, Saturn, and Pisces about um, integrating in a more structural, more widely encompassing way the things that are really deeply important, but kind of special or phenomenal. And I think that there's a particular kind of collapse that people are susceptible to of after experiencing something glimmery or something magical, this like depressive fog, this blanket covering it and being like, well, that was cool, but it's done now. Um, and I think that that is culturally like normalized in a lot of ways. And I think that this is changing. I think that the culture is becoming more, the quality of sex education or the quality of trauma healing education, the quality of like personal development education, I've seen increase. Um, it's definitely proliferated. It's not all equal, but I think that there's more people invested in like, what if life was magical and excellent? And not in a way where we're putting these like impossible standards or like whatever on top of it, but actually sitting with, okay, what is this deeper magic and essence of your longing, your desire nature, your soul? And what would it be like to build a life that was in touch with that instead of it being so intense to touch that longing that you just shove it away and never look back? Right. So I think this Venus Saturn redemption moment can be about like claiming what the fuck you care about at a really deep level. Even if it's not something that feels the most socially normal. Like Pisces is a very transcendent sign. There's something about being able to dream beyond what is. And that's the tricky part too, because at least what's normal or what is or what's shared socially is like tried and true. But if you're drawn to something beyond that, you also have to figure out how to make it real, how to integrate it. And I think that's the really hard work of Venus or of Saturn and Pisces that um, it maybe is where people get lost, because it's not just a one and done or a 1, 2, 3 easy step process. It takes years. It is an ongoing lifestyle. It is a commitment um, to have an intimate relationship with yourself and your desire and your potential and your possibility. Um, and there's so many places a person could get stuck or lost or just, give up. And I think that actually mapping out those places and forming a deeper relationship to that journey is part of what this transit is about. So a few more things I want to say. I think there's something here about deconstructing Disney expectations. This is a phrasing I made up for this. It's the idea that there's like this pure magical essence of our heart or our sex or our love nature that we're just supposed to be like already in connection with, or it's just supposed to be easy to touch. When in reality, like there are moments in good conditions in early life or whatnot, where there's just something very natural and free about us and it just expresses. But as soon as we experience trauma or shutdown or rejection or, this feedback that it's not okay, we do form these barriers, these layers over our heart, and we develop these defensive and protective structures. And so coming back into contact with the real, like magical essence within ourselves is a work of some kind. And that doesn't always get expressed inside of the gloss of like the Disney feeling about all of these things. It's like there's actually like a hard road sometimes to open this material up, or there's hard things that we have to touch and feel to come back into relationship with parts of ourselves. So there are processes, there are ways, there are skills, there are containers that can help us unwind that material for sure. And that would be allying with Saturn to, constructively work through this instead of the unconscious allying with Saturn to just shut this stuff down. Humanity has always grappled with sexuality in different ways, in different cultural contexts, some definitely better than others, and some like terrible. And I think it's pertinent for Venus and Saturn and Pisces. Like there's this gloss really around wish fulfillment and things being super magical versus the actual hard, concrete details of the path that includes a totality of different feeling states, not just the happily ever after energy. And so it may be like where sex and love and matters of the heart are being really glossed over. Like if you think it should be easy or it should look a certain way, or you're just supposed to know and have this stuff figured out because that's what it looks like in the dream of the overculture or in other people or whatnot. It's like, where has this material been mystified? And of course it's dreamy and enchanted, and that's why it gets mystified. But how can you demystify it and understand it at a more higher level? So demystifying our problems. I wanted to name that the tendency in Pisces can be to dramatize and glamorize and make tragedy out of our difficulties. I've definitely done this, and it made some great works of art. Like shout out to Hungry Ghosts of Paradise, the audio novella that I wrote and published to Magic of the Spheres podcast. And I had to be with the tragedy and the drama layer of it to like really process those emotions. So it's sensational and artistic to be with, the transpersonal dimension of heartbreak. Like heartbreak is a really personal experience, but it touches into something so much. It can break you open. It's a huge feeling state. People make so much art from it, and it's not an end point necessarily. Mm. While oceanic feelings of paradise lost, right, despair, disillusionment are there and need to be felt, there are deeper frameworks that work to explore why we feel these things and frameworks that help to integrate those feelings. And although that is, somewhat beyond the scope of this video, I wanted to name it that it's like, yes, the oceanic feelings are real. And if you zoom out far enough or you have the frameworks, they make sense. Right. And I've been through this personally of having these big experiences and big feelings and being like, I don't understand what's happening. No one I talk to understands. If I talk about this with people, they only give me platitudes. Like, I don't think anyone understands the depth of my suffering or can even name, like, in an intelligent way what I'm going through. Like, what is this? I'm dying inside of this. Like that feeling, of like it's a trauma feeling of like too much and you're alone inside of it. And further along the path, and that material, sometimes you put it away or it's like, well, I can't figure it out. No one gets it. So I'm not just going to live with this open wound everywhere. But also like eventually the teacher or the guide or the information or the catalyzing or integrative experience appears, the context appears where it's like, oh, all of that confusion, all of that mess, I get it. Like there's frameworks, there's something that helps me understand what happened. And so with that, I think the missing part, in between that deep, uncontained oceanic feeling that's too much that we then repress, I think is the pursuit of what allows our vessel, our container to skillfully hold that oceanic content. What is it that we learn about life, about patterns in nature, about patterns in human relationships, about our biology, about our nervous system, about trauma healing, about somatic work? Like, what is it that we gain as a structural context that helps us actually expand and open inside of and be able to hold the immensity of those activations, right? So that you don't have to suppress the tragic feeling of, I had this big love in my youth and then I, let it go and I never felt something like that again. And now I just have this normal life. Where something got put in a box and then we just chose like a sensible route or something like that. I think it's in grappling with the deeper charge or mystery that's actually a lot for us to hold. And so whatever the context is, whatever's happening within this transit, I would say like take a look at where the charge is, like where the life energy is, and consider your relationship to that material and the possible pressure to shut it down, to be relieved of the pressure, to be rescued from it, to have the answers, to just get to the arrival point, to not have this problem anymore, to be at the magical finish line, all of that. And what it's like to slow down and open inside of the mystery. And the possible path of learning that's opening up from being with the immensity of this oceanic barrier. And where this can go from being so disempowering, so tragic, so grief-stricken, even though at moments it does show up that way, to being such a big, expansive adventure in consciousness and personal growth, mastery, excellence, connection to life. Big things for Venus, Saturn, and Pisces. This is what I have for you. I do want to say that I am teaching again the Evolutionary Astrology Intensive. For those of you that like to plan ahead, we are beginning April 8th, 2025. And this, I'll leave the link in the notes. But this is a program that I've been teaching for years to transmit the language of evolutionary astrology, all the archetypes, how to put it all together, so that you can speak this language, hone your archetypal eye, and gain a narrative for your natal chart and also the ability to read natal charts of the ongoing soul life journey, as in who you are as a soul and why this life. What about this life, who you are in this life, your circumstances, what you were born into? How is that relevant to a deeper story arc that you're living out? How is your life the perfect alchemical exploration for what it is that you are learning and developing as a soul? I can't tell you how deeply this material has given me life, has helped me explore and get to know myself in delightfully provocative ways, but also has given me so much framework from a young age, actually, speaking of Saturn, um, to play in reality in a way that I don't even know what my life would be like without this. I love this language, and I teach it because of everything that it's given me, and because for those of you out here that love astrology and are enthusiasts about it and want to have it as a language that you can speak for yourself, this is what this program is for. So it is by application. The link to learn more about the course and to apply is in the notes. And again, do like this video, leave a comment, let me know what resonated with you, and I'll see you again soon.